Previously on Coming Out of the Cosmic Closet. I also read tarot cards. I have a little bit of mediumship happens occasionally. Sometimes, like a bit of a dead person will just pop on in and want to have a bit of a...
you said?
That would often be the time when I'm doing a tarot reading and suddenly, Grandpa Trevor's come in to have a talk about the new car I'm buying. It seems like, I hate to say that the sort of gender lines run on the other side, but it's the dads and the uncles are always about the car and the renovations, and the mums and the grandmas are very often about, ooh, found this nice fella for you.
Yeah.
So it's super cute. Everyone has a special gift. Mine, the Circle of Light. They speak through me, and they're here to assist the planet's evolution to a more enlightened space. And for some reason, they chose me, a raunchy comedian, to be their vessel. I used to be secretive about my ability, but now it's time to come out of the cosmic closet, and you should too. My name is Georgia Jean, and these are my crazy stories. I was crying on the plane a bit.
Yeah.
I did have a few wines, and I said to the airline stewardess, I was like, yeah, I'm that person on this flight. I'm sure you have one of us every flight.
Yeah. In case you were wondering who it is on this flight.
It is me.
You're looking at her.
You're looking at us. Give me the Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Coming Out of the Cosmic Closet. So fun and exciting to have all you adventurers in cosmic wisdom, magic, energy thingamajiggies, all that sort of thing. I am Georgia Jean from Circle Evolution, and I'm joined by my beautiful and charming and wonderful sidekick in this business, Melissa Ritigliano of
themarslab.com. Hi.
Hi.
So glad to be back on the cosmic couch with you.
Yes, indeed. It's good to be back.
We took a little break.
We did.
Because you lost your dear papa.
Yes.
Yeah, we're so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, pretty big event in anybody's life.
Yeah.
Energetically. And I think it's actually really interesting because in our first episode, we talked a lot about mediumship, and it's not even my biggest thing that I do. I've had some pretty cool things happen in it, but it's not my biggest thing. And afterwards, I was like, gosh, why am I talking about talking to dead people so much right at the top of the show? Little known to me at that time that I'd sort of be on the other side of the cosmic couch now.
Yeah.
With my dad passing and kind of experiencing what it's like to want to make that connection and to receive that connection and go through that, having someone be physical and now be non-physical when it's like a really significant relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing with losing someone is well, if you believe that in angels or in, that life goes on just in a different form, you can know that, but it's what do you do with that physical space that human used to occupy?
Totally.
That's the hard part.
And I think you really, I'm getting my truth pimples because it's exactly what I want to talk about. I think even having the connection to the other side, you still have to psychologically process the physical loss, the loss of this person in this lifetime as you knew them. And there was a lot of, with losing my dad, a lot of what I would call existential angst. There is this figure that is one of your primary energies that basically bring you into this world is now gone in that form. So it was, I'm definitely very aware that the human grieving process has to happen. You can't just kind of spiritually bypass into, he's in a better place,
sure,
sort of thing.
Right.
That's nice to hear. But until, for me personally, of course I'm not going to tell anybody how they should grieve, but for me personally, I knew that I would have to do the hardcore physical grieving and literally the throwing myself on the ground, crying, grieving, so I could get to the connection that's on the other side. Because I know when people come to me, when that energy hasn't been processed, the psychological loss, it's actually harder to feel the connection, because that's the thing that's actually kind of blocking it, blocking you feeling the connection. Because once again, it's the ego mind. And I don't mean like ego, you're an asshole ego, just the mind that we have that is here to block out all of that non-physical shiznatch is still there. And we all, any connection to the spirit or the non-physical comes through a processing of the egoic consciousness and the release of that and all its limitations. So you can feel that. So for me, the grief and this sort of existential angst, and I was surprised at how much just the psychology of played a part. And what I mean by that is going through layers of guilt, because I lived a long time apart from my dad and had huge love and very profound,
and not emotionally
apart,
dad. Just physically apart in different countries.
In different countries. But I mean, but there was stuff like my dad was an Australian man. He literally never told me that he loved me until on his deathbed. It was like the last thing he said to me.
Wow. And this is all really fresh. Like this just happened. What was it, a month ago?
Yeah, it was the 20th. Yeah, it's about 6 weeks ago. So, and you know that just saying that, I've obviously had a little flush of emotion. Come up. So, you know, the grieving process just continues to happen with that, because that is part of the psychology of our relationship that I know is continues to get worked out now. And it was really amazing that my dad, I knew that the cosmic shift was happening, because my dad, who is a very he didn't believe in the work that I do, you know, and actually I had wanted to have him on the show and actually talk to him. That was one of my first intentions, to go back and be like, hey, let's just talk about, you know, what is it for you that makes this not believable? I'm gonna have to talk to my brother instead. But towards the end of his life, because he was just really hard-headed about many things, towards the end of his life, he actually went to therapy, and then near the end, he identified himself as a Buddhist. I'm like, this is crazy.
Wow.
He was very much a atheist/agnostic. But went through a phase where he was really like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and wanted to kind of disprove it. And when I was a little kid, I was converting to Catholicism. That's another whole story. I was so worried about his soul, because he was living in Africa at the time, and I was in Australia, and I would write him these letters and be like, Dad. Actually, he was living in Australia by then, but in a different state. I'd be like, Dad, I'm really worried you're going to go to hell. Like, just try and believe. Try and believe.
I just saw him crumbling up that letter in a fist.
Yeah, doing like, my soul is for the devil. So, but he was cool in other ways, because I had these T-shirts with all the names of the spiritual leaders of the planet. It's my Who's Your Master T-shirt. I might have to reprint those. And he actually wore that. And one of the things that I found going through his closet was, you know, that T-shirt literally threadbare. He wore it till there were holes in it.
I saw that T-shirt. It was like he wore the hell out of it.
He wore the hell out of it.
So sweet.
And I gave him another one, and we buried him in it. And that was good. But the whole experience was very, very profound. It happened very quickly. So people are, you know, like, well, did you know it was going to happen? You know, you're all tapped in, whatever. And living away from my family, I have had this before, where I get physical symptoms of what's happening to them. Got one of those naughty motorbikes. I get physical symptoms. So years ago, I was working on a startup, And it was super stressful. And I had like a lot of anxiety about it because you've got like this a little bit of amount of money and trying to like build a whole startup. And I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of how startups happen, internet startups happen. So I was just like so stressed out. And one night I was in bed thinking I was having a heart attack. I'm like, oh my God, because the startup's name was Butterbud. So it would just go through my head all the time, like Butterbud, 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 gotta do this, Butterbud, 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 Butterbud.
Like butter you eat?
It was like, it was a barter trade website. But it was just like barter, barter with your buddies. BADABUD. We'll talk about it some other time probably.
Yeah.
But so I was in bed like Butterbud this, Butterbud that. The people in India, I've got to developers, Butterbud, just madness.
And your left arm is tingling.
And my left,
smell burnt toast.
Yeah, I totally thought I was having a heart attack. And luckily a friend of mine had told me that he had a panic attack. And he thought he was having a heart attack years before. He was like, I thought I was having a heart attack. And I went to the hospital and the American medical system, I had like several doctors come in, look at me, whatever. And then they basically said, you're having a panic attack. And they gave him an aspirin. And his bill was $50,000. Because every time a doctor came in, it was an expert doing a consultation.
Oh my God.
So luckily I had that memory. So I'm like, this is probably just a panic attack.
Yeah. Let me save myself $50,000.
Don't go to the medical emergency place yet. It's fine. And then, but actually what was happening was the next day I found out that my dad, then still alive, was going in for open heart surgery. They had just discovered that he had to have like this major open heart surgery. And so I was like, okay, whoa, that's pretty crazy. I was just feeling all that heart action. And then when my grandma died a few years later, she used to get indigestion and be like, brap, like burp a lot and stuff, be like, brap, brap. And, one day I woke up and I was just like, brap, brap, doing like these little chicken burps, brap, brap. And I'm like, this is like Nan. I'm turning into my Nan. I'm getting old. I'm turning into my grandma. And she actually passed away that day as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And you told me recently something about your mom. You were going through something physically.
Yes.
And then it turns out your mom was feeling better, but you, were suffering. Like you had taken it on.
It's part of like the Bend the Matrix work that I do, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But yeah, my mom was having, a bunch of physical issues and I was going out to visit her and I was just really dreading it. And, I was like, I just like the sort of the weight of being away from your family and feeling that kind of parental stress, worried about them and their health and stuff. And she had actually I had been out, I had gone back, and then she went into hospital to have I think this was when she had the knee replacement. And, but then she had all these stomach hits. She got a twist in her stomach actually I can't remember that was this trip. It was a stomach thing, right? And so I was like, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm going to go home and look after her and she's just going to be like falling to pieces everywhere sort of thing. And we're going to have a bit of guilt and all these worries are going to start kicking in. And I went to the airport and I got this really bad stomach situation because I'd been working on the Matrix. I was like, okay, maybe there's a reality out there where my mother, everything works out. Like this isn't this sort of slow decline into terrible health and all this sort of stuff. That there's a reality out there somewhere where my mother is fine. Yeah. And I do this matrix bending work, which we'll talk about. And I was like, I just need to put my consciousness into that reality, go into my heart, center in my heart, and go, okay, that's the reality I want to go to when I see my mum. So I go to the airport and I start getting this really, I'm going to get too graphic, but it was like, let's just say a very bad stomach situation kicked in. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it through this plane ride. The plane got delayed for like 12 hours. So they ended up sending us off to a hotel for the day. And I'm like, okay, kind of thank God. But so I went to this like fancy hotel in Waikiki. Thanks Qantas or Jetstar, whoever it was. And had this like full-on stomach situation.
Yeah. Got to know the bathroom pretty good. That's all we need to say.
I did get to go and I did go and get some stuff. But yeah, it was like, but it was a stomach situation. And I was like, I'm going to be so sick. If I arrive in Australia sick, my mum's sick, oh God, this is just like a nightmare waiting to happen, you know. And I wanted to be in good shape. So it all kind of worked out that the plane got delayed. And then I just ended up moving my flight to go, instead of in like 12 hours, to go the same time the next day that I would have gone.
Yep.
So I had this sort of 24-hour luxury hotel stomach resolution session. And I started to get better.
Healing occurred, yeah.
I get off the plane. I'm just still like, oh, what shape is she going to be in? I don't know. I show up to her house and my mum, bim, bim, bim. Hi. Hey, I'm right as rain. Everything, I don't know. Everything just cleared up in the last 24 hours.
It's the strangest thing.
It's the strangest thing. And I'm like, it is a strange thing to be me sometimes. So, and I was fine. She was fine. So, in order to pop into that reality where she wasn't going to be all sick and we were going to have this horrible holiday and I was going to be sick, we actually ended up having a really wonderful time. All of her, you know, she made this like really rapid recovery and, you know, Bob's your uncle. So that was a good story about going home.
Yeah.
This one was interesting because I had seen last time that I was out, and a few years ago, my dad had also a total organ failure. I went into hospital, and it was a night before I was in the opening night of a play, and I was literally like, my dad's gone into total organ collapse. I found out at like 4 p.m, and I had to go and do this opening night of a play. Like, hey, the show must go on. And I was like, I'm going to do this play and find out if my dad's alive, you know. At the end of it, basically. Wow. But I think I did a whole bunch of energy work then, did the play, came out, and he basically made it through that health crisis. But it definitely diminished his health, and what ended up him basically dying was this sort of heart and lung failure. Anyway, you don't need to know all the details about my dad's thing, but last time I saw him, he had definitely, which was around Christmas, he had definitely declined. And I was like, it's probably going to happen in the next year and a half. I wasn't expecting it to happen this quickly. But a friend of mine, the Sunday night before I knew, had emailed me, a very dear friend of mine, where I'll have her on the show one of these days because it's kind of a true soulmate story. I won't ruin the story now, but she had sent me an email 2 weeks ago to an old email address, and I never saw it. It's just
like
the one
that
that
you don't really use.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the original like 19, you know, year 2000 email address or whatever. Like, you're just like, it's so full of junk mail and everything. But I didn't see it. I still check it, but I just don't check it that well.
Yeah.
And I saw this email that day, and she had sent me some photos from when we lived next door to each other as little babies. And she didn't know who it was in the photos. And I looked at this photo. It turned out to be a photo of my dad and my sister. And I just, I saw it and I felt really sad. And then I looked at it later. I was out with friends and I just started looked at it again in the car, and I just started bawling and bawling and bawling. And I had dinner, and my friends were like in a bar, and they're like, "You're going to come in?" And I'm like, yeah, I'll be in. Like texting, I'm like, I shouldn't go in, but I kind of got myself together a little bit. And I'm not a big, like, if I'm going to do my bowling, I don't usually do it in the bar. And something big is happening, like when the energy is so strong. And I went in and I just started crying uncontrollably. And I was talking to this friend of mine, just going, I just think my dad is, probably going to go in the next, year and a half, or I don't know. And I was talking a little bit about my family and just crying inconsolable. And, I got it together after a while, but there was something in that photo that was holding the energy. And that was the night that he went into into
Yeah.
his health basically collapsed. He went into hospital.
Yep.
And I'm going into the story because there are a lot of beautiful things that happened so I called him, and my dad was very stoic, and I called him. So I found out from my brother. He texted and said, Dad's got into hospital. I called him, and I spoke to him in the hospital, and I'm like, Dad, do you want me to come home? I can come home. And he's like, no, I'm fine. And he sounded off, but he was always like that. Mm-hmm. Like, he had cancer 5 times, and you wouldn't even know. He was like, I'm fine. Amazing, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, she's serious?
Yeah. He had a lot, and he is a brutal, we can talk about that. I'm going to talk about cancer more, but his will to live vigorously and to work. He was just worked really, really hard. He loved to work. And when my work ethic is kicked in, I think I get that from when it's kicked in. When I get it from my dad. But so he was like, no. But I was like, oh. And then I told my stepmother, and she's like, well, come out in a few days. I need a bit of rest because I've been looking after him. And I was like, okay, I'll booked a ticket to come out 10 days later. And then the next day, my stepmom called and was like, they're taking him off the life support. They're taking him off what they've had.
Yeah.
And it's all happening. Like, it's happening. And he, at that point, was asleep. I don't know if he was in a coma at that point. And this was what was really powerful, was that I knew. And I think I knew, because I got to tell you about Luke Perry in all of this, right?
And this was that crazy full moon.
It was that crazy full moon. So I knew, I was like, I'll tell you about Luke Perry. So I know that we have these certain periods of time where a gateway will open up and a lot of people will cross over during this time. And it's basically to do with this, this shift in consciousness that we're happening, that a lot of souls who kind of want to come back for the new reality and who are maybe like older or ill or there's something about their life that maybe is just too hard to correct. And I'm not going to say this is Luke Perry, but that they're just like, reset, I'll just come back for the new ride, because the energies are moving in, sort of activating this shift that we still haven't even properly talked about yet. But and so some spirits are just like, I think I'm going to take this gateway out and I'll be back for the next round. And so I have seen that you have this pattern where there'll be like some big celebrity deaths, usually some kind of mass death. So we had it could be a natural disaster, it could be terrorism, it could be plane crash. So when Luke Perry died, I was like, if this is a gateway opening, I don't think Dad's going to make it, right? It was just like one of those passing thoughts. So when I heard he went into hospital, I was like, even though part of he's denying it, I'm like, this, and we had Luke Perry, and then there was like the Auckland massacre. And I was like, okay, I think we're having a gateway. And so I was sort of like, this is probably happening. But my dad, when he was denying it, my stepmother, she just wasn't ready to accept this. She thought they would just tweak him up a bit and shuffle him back to the house and some oxygen or whatever. But part of me knew, and obviously with the photo on some level, I knew what was happening. So anyway, then he went off life support, and I'm like, okay. My stepmom was like, just get a ticket. So I got a very good friend of mine helped me get another ticket. Thank you, Ryan Devitt. And I spoke to Dad. He came out of his coma. My stepmom called again, and she's like, he's woken up. And I got to talk to him. All right, a little emotional. So that's when and I honestly, I say I love you to everybody, and I didn't in life even say it that much to I never said it to my dad, really, because I knew it made him uncomfortable to actually then have to maybe say it back. They're just from that old school that didn't say it.
Totally.
But I had said to him when I spoke to him, I would say things like lots of love to you or whatever, but that real like I love you thing was words that we did not speak. It's crazy because I tell everybody it all the time.
Yeah.
But I just respected that made him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So he came out, and I think he knew. I think wherever he was, in that that coma or that rest.
Right.
I truly believe he went somewhere and he knew he had to come back and speak, and speak to us and say these words of love.
Yeah.
And he told me that he loved me. And it was like amazing. And I was saying, I had already bought the ticket, and I was like, I'm coming back. He knew I was coming back. And my brother also got to speak to him. And I know that they talk about this thing like the surge before people die.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he came back and he was, talking to my stepmom and talking. They have this vineyard and talking, and he was like sort of full of energy and
how long did that last?
So that lasted, I guess he ate like quite a lot of food. And, it was probably a few hours, but they did put him into hospice. Mm-hmm, so my stepmom was like, he's back, but it's still the end,
Yeah.
So I went to bed thinking I would get back in time to see him at least. And in my mind, I'm like, I'll be by his side and I'll, make my final peace in, and I'll spend that time with him. But he died that night. Mm-hmm. And it was one awful plane ride home, I can tell you that. But
so you were in between planes when you spoke with him?
No, I hadn't gone to the airport. I was still at home when I spoke to him.
Okay.
And then I was packing, thinking, I'm going to see him.
Yeah.
I'm going to see him again. And got on the plane. No, sorry, I woke up in the morning and then there was a text from my stepmom saying that he had passed. And as I was going to bed, I did feel this lift of energy, and I thought, I've got some people on the other side. I thought they were coming to like comfort me basically, but part of me was like, oh, that could be the release.
Yeah.
Because even when a friend of mine was over and I was packing and kind of, frantic and stuff, and I felt this sudden lift of energy, and I was like, oh God, he's gone, right? Mm. But right then my phone rang, and that's when my stepmother said, he's come out of the coma or whatever it was, and that's when I got to speak for him. So he sort of like came back, doing his like final curtain appearance. So I went home, and I missed his death, but to be honest, my dad would have absolutely hated having me by his bed blubbing and crying and be like, Dad, I love you. And I just, I was like, that wasn't his thing. So I think it happened what was right for him.
Sure.
We said those words. But he was a proud man. He wouldn't have, I think he even recently, he didn't like to have us FaceTime when he, when he was feeling off or whatever. Yeah. He didn't want to be seen. So I was like, okay, good for you, Dad. But I did go and see his body. I'm like, you may have got out of this while you were alive, but we will have our final words. and I went and saw his body. And I have to say, another, if anyone is approaching the death thing, there was a massive amount of energy still in his body when I went and saw him. Mm-hmm. So, some people say the spirit leaves. My personal experience was maybe because my dad knew that I wanted that, but I was surprised when I put my hand on it that I got a full energy connection.
Wow.
So he wasn't totally there. And I think obviously all of this stuff is flexible, but I was surprised. I was surprised at how much energy was still present. And that was the time where I really got to talk to him, because then you're so in the funeral arrangements and doing all of that, which is also a very profound and amazing part of the process, I think, to participate in. But that time with being with his body was where I got to just sort of say, just talk to him. Talk to him in a way that physical presence was still there. And I'm really glad to have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the funeral, I think there's something about participating in the funeral that, because I knew I would leave, and so I'm not in that space where he existed physically, the process of doing the funeral, my brother and I put it together at his at their vineyard, and in this beautiful, they have a cellar which they dug out of the rock, and just there's a very sacred kind of energy in that thing. So we set it all up in there, and my stepmother selected a wicker coffin, which biodegrades.
Oh, amazing.
And she made all these amazing, beautiful wreaths made out of the vines from the vineyard. So he was buried like a bottle of Chianti. So, to say. And he loved his football team, Richmond, so he had the Richmond scarf. But going through the process, I made a movie of all the pictures, and going through the pictures, there's just something very powerful about that, the sacredness of ceremony.
Yes.
Not just to honor and put him to death, but to also kind of create the crucible for the new life, because there's such a big part of the emotional processing in the morning happened for me within that process, that we were setting up, really what is the new life of us all now after this, what's the new life between my stepmother and I, this vineyard, creating this kind of, for me, sacred ceremony that honored my dad very much, but also honoured the new phase, or created a crucible for the new phase. So everyone's different, about whether they want to go through that stuff, but I'm such a believer in the morning, grieving, feeling emotion process in order to move on, in order to then let your new life come in. And you're allowed to have that, because the spirits don't want us to be miserable forever and ever. So if you just, for me, I'm like, okay, bring on the grief, bring on the angst, let's do this. And sometimes I thought I was like literally losing my mind. It was definitely very difficult. I don't want to make light of it.
Yeah.
But I'm just like a hard, fast processor. Some people might do it for a much longer time.
But were you conscious of it? Were you like, all right, the sooner I get into this and cry on the floor?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like, because also I had terrible stomach pains on the flight coming over, and I knew my body was trying to suppress some of the emotions, because I literally found out I had 2 hours before I was getting picked up, before going to the airport and then being in transit for the next whatever it was, 18 hours. Well, it was like a 12-hour flight and then another flight. It was really awful, I have to say. And my body I was in a lot of physical pain, because I couldn't just be like, I was crying on the plane a bit.
Yeah.
I did have a few wines, and I said to the airline stewardess, I was like, yeah, like, I'm that person on this flight. I'm sure you have one of us every flight.
Yeah, in case you were wondering who it is on this flight.
It is me.
You're looking at her.
You're looking at us. Give me the Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, I had to calm my nervous system down. It's, because again, even though I know on some level I'm spiritually connected, energetically connected, biologically, my biology that connects me to my physical family is freaking out. This is the survival. This is the father figure is dying. He is the leader of the tribe. So this is a really important thing to understand about consciousness, is we can be totally energetically connected, but our biology, which is something that is shifting and changing at the moment, is still wired for survival. And so when we lose a tribe's member, part of our survival system is like, oh shit, and freaking out. Yeah. So there's so many levels of our consciousness that's operating. On the one hand, it's just a hot mess. I'm kind of feeling him, but then this sort of psychological angst and pain, and then the nervous system just, and then my body locking up and just freaking out, basically. So yeah, you can tell I handled it well. No, and then we decided to do the ceremony, and leading up to that, there was one day where I was like, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose my mind. And but it all ended up being absolutely amazing. And truly, now it's really interesting, because my dad really didn't believe or understand what I do. He missed a lot of my life because we were apart for not just when I started traveling and left Australia when I was 24, but even in our childhood, we spent a lot of time apart because he lived and worked in Africa. We all lived in Africa, and then we were separated. So that, I think, actually part of my energy connection is I've always been, even though I wasn't conscious or understood it, energetically connecting with people who are far away, you know, and feeling them and feeling their emotions and feeling what's happening to them. But I didn't really know that that's what some of what my feelings were also his feelings. Like when he stayed in Africa and we came back, I felt such an intense longing to be with my dad. And it was years later, my stepmom said that when she met him, he would just sit with pictures of my sister and I and just sit. And I thought he was just off working and gallivanting around, but really he was sitting there looking at these pictures of my sister and I and really longing for us to be with us.
Wow.
And I didn't, even when she told me that, I didn't believe it. But then when I saw how he was, because my dad was just not someone who picked up on the phone and called. He was, I think he had phone phobia. I always would have to call him. But when I saw him with my brother's sons, my nephews, on Instagram, my sister-in-law's great about posting, and he would just sit there and look at these pictures. And I was like, yeah, that's what you used to do. And now I understand that when I was feeling all that longing, it was also you I was feeling. So these kind of these connections with our family, which are psychological, they're energetic. And it's really interesting because how our psychological mind might process that separation. And like my psychological mind was like, well, Dad's not here, I'm alone. But energetically what was happening is that connection was always there. And as I've become more energetically sensitive, I experience it in a lot more of it's more of my conscious reality. It's more of my, how I live in life. So, you know, people, I posted on Facebook because I knew I was going to go through a difficult time, and I said, I really need people's love, and I felt it. And when people post stuff on Facebook and say, please send, you know, love and light to me or this person who's in hospital, I know that stuff works. I know that when my dad had the organ collapse, I put a post, and I know that energy was surrounding him during that. And I felt it viscerally for me because I can feel this stuff. So these aren't abstract concepts like love and light. Like if 400 people hold a positive intention for somebody, because we're connected, you know, and we all just choose to focus love on that person or that experience. I'm telling you, that stuff works. It's what got me through, along with the Chardonnay, that plane ride. I could feel people's energy supporting me, and the messages that people sent me. A lot of people don't know what to do when someone has a beloved die. I didn't until you go through it. You don't really know what works. And for me, definitely, the people who send messages. Honestly, it doesn't matter what you say. Just say something, you know, like I love you, I'm thinking of you. If you need me, I'm here. If not, just something, because you feel when you lose such a big touch point to your existence, feeling that web of, I have all these other touch points that love me, that support me. It definitely helps with lightening the bereftness quality of losing someone. So in my experience, you know, again, people are different, but I noticed that the people who've lost people were like on it. You know, because they obviously know what worked for them. So if you've ever got a hesitation, should I write? I'm like, I don't want to disturb them or whatever. That's what I'll often feel or have felt in the past. I don't know. Like I don't want to remind them of it, but just something. It's just because I being apart from my family, my friends network is just so massive. And it's such a heavy thing. You can't lay it all on like one friend.
Right.
Like, you will listen to my grief day in, day out here. But I had enough wonderful, amazing friends to kind of move that experience around.
And that's always beautiful to see, not like in a testing way, like, let me see, but just to see who steps up. Yeah. Because sometimes it's not who you think it is, right?
Right,
and it's just
right.
Damn, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And often it's coming because they've experienced it and they know.
Yep.
They just know. For that particular thing, they're good. Like, they're really good. And one person who really, again, and here's another crazy element of this story, the friend of mine who had sent me the photo, very old family friend, very old friend, she came to meet me at the airport when I finally got to Melbourne, because I decided my brother was coming in the next morning and my dad's vineyard is in the country. So I decided to get a scrappy hotel near the airport and wait for my brother to arrive. But the thought of being by myself for even more time,
in a crappy hotel room.
In a crappy hotel with no one to process it was getting like unbearable, really. And I was in all the physical pain. But my friend said, I'll come and meet you. And she did what all good girl friends, she brought wine, chocolate and painkillers.
Oh, wow.
And she got me through that first night. Yep. She got me through that first night. And, you know, then my brother came and we went to the vineyard. But then on my last day in Melbourne, I was there when she had to put her dog down. She had to put her dog down, and that's like her child. And it was like this very, and we'll probably talk about it more. It was this really powerful thing of this friend who is literally my oldest friend in the world. Us being there and the universe putting us together. Yeah. Whatever, our souls bringing us together.
In general, you mean? In general,
for this, because she'd had that dog for like 12 years. It was, that dog, Audrey, was her child. Yeah. So the loss of that dog is, you know, massive. And I've lost my dog, so I know what that was like. So it just showed up. And I think the dog knew. The dog was like, George is here, you know, I can go on this day. Yeah. And they just go down, you know, when it's right. And literally the half an hour before I was going to the airport, we did that. So it was a very, very profound trip. There's so many soul connections going on in that journey and I guess I just wanted to speak about it because this process of going from physical to non-physical, honoring our human self, you know, the psychology of the inner children, you know, the parts of us that, you know, are, you know, just love our parents or struggle with our parents, because not everybody, you know, we all have, you know, parents are a big part of our psychological and spiritual path, like how we are programmed by them, how we build a psychological relationship to our childhoods, which are, you know, my childhood was difficult. Can we find the love? Can you find the love? Can you find the forgiveness? Can you find can you make peace? Yeah, you know, it's such a lot of lessons. It's a lot of lessons, and I just don't feel like the connection with the other side becomes as strong and as powerful and as constant as it can until the human process is worked through to a deep, and that might take you, you know, a few weeks. It might happen in 3 days for you. It might happen in 4 years. But having done that and done it like hardcore, I feel my dad. It's funny because I was in a lot of angst and I wasn't feeling him energetically. And it's weird. I had ordered this light. It's called a Soma Veda light, and it gets rid of like electro smog and, you know. Oh,
I saw it in your room. It's glowy.
Yeah, the glowy green light. It you know, you can use it to like purify water, and it just gets rid of all the, you know, the neggy waves. Yeah. I had got that and it arrived you know, about a week after I got back from my trip, and I was still very much in the angst. And I popped that on, and the first night I slept with it, I woke up in the morning feeling a really strong connection to someone who's important to me. And then the next morning I woke up and I felt my dad's energy very, very strongly, very clearly. I felt it in the same way as I felt it when I went and saw his body. And I don't know if it was the light or whatever it was, but at some point, you know, the energy field cleared up enough. It helped me with some of the psychological processing enough that I could feel the energy connection. And then there was sort of like another wave. But now I actually feel amazing, and I feel like all of these things are happening in my life that I think my dad is helping with now. I truly believe he sees what I've been doing. And he's like, oh, this is what she's been doing. All right. I mean, you know, he's helping to line things up in my career, my business, things that like he would have approved of. Because he was always like, when I first tried to tell him about this stuff, he was like, that is bloody ridiculous. You know, he wasn't having a bar of it. And then after a while, after I persisted with it, he was like, well, you know, as long as you can make some money out of it, kind of thing. Yeah. And he kind of, you know, came to some, you know, practical level of acceptance. So now I'm sure, well, he's obviously going to believe it because he's on the other side. What's up, Dad? Psh, psh. I'm just high-fiving him. But things are really moving in terms of like manifestation. And the other crazy thing was with my skydiving. He did not like me skydiving. And I didn't talk to him about it that much because I know it made him uncomfortable, you know, and he was worried about me. Yeah. And he was like, you know, I'm not that coordinated. So he had been like, he'd always taken me to play Saturday morning hockey. So he really knew that it was a lot more enthusiasm than skill. And I think he was, when I told him about the skydiving, he was like, no, you're not really... You're not really a physically adept person. Is this really the thing you should be doing? Jumping out of planes and stuff like that. But it's funny, after he died, I waited a little bit until I was more psychologically stable. But the day I did my first jump, there was this feeling that I knew what I was doing. That I had a clarity of mind and a confidence in myself. And I've got 500 jobs. You would hope that it would be coming in, but I'll talk about another time why it was also a big struggle for me to just believe in myself. It's like, I was like, okay, no, if this happens, I do this. The clarity of mind. It was really astonishing. So I think that either, again, his doubts about me doing it were somehow still a little woven into my energy field, into my psychology about it. Or now that he's on the other side, he's like, okay, this is kind of cool shit, actually. Yeah. I'm coming with you, and if we're going to do this together, you're going to have your mind straight, because he was very practical like that. So it's been, you know, a very really interesting, profound, obviously deeply sad. I'm just talking about the psychology because I hope to help other people find their way maybe to build the relationship with, because it's not something you're ready for. And
sometimes people need permission to grieve. Normal grieving.
Totally. You know? Yeah. Because I'm glad you brought that up, because there's such a societal judgment about emotion, like, oh, she's too emotional. And like definitely my mom, like some people were worried, but I know that emotion is energy in motion. Yeah. And I know from working with people who have chronic illness, who have cancer, who have, you know, all of these things going on, that when we don't let emotion move, it gets blocked and people get sick. Yeah. So I would rather cry and grieve and help that emotion, energy be in motion than be locked down and be like contracting in my body and locking down my energy. And this is really, a lot of people talk about the the masculine and feminine energy. I guess we'll just divert into this right now because and people are like, down with the patriarchy and, up with the feminine energy. And when we're talking energetically, what is masculine energy and what is feminine energy? Separating it from men and women, gender, and, the fight for, because I think a lot of that fight that we're seeing in the world between men and women, quote unquote, like women's rights, and the Congress, the white male Congress, like oppressing women, or however it's projecting in your reality, you might be experiencing this fight at work. And men might also, and are also experiencing, hey, I'm feeling really hated upon by women because of this other big collective thing that I don't really, I feel like I'm, a decent person. There's a big struggle, a big polarized struggle in our consciousness, in our broader projected consciousness between the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah.
And what, to me, that is the mirror of the struggling to find balance between the masculine and feminine energy within us. So our masculine energy is that proactive, creative, mental, sort of strategizing aspect. And that's when we're really using our mind as a tool, right? As a tool to get things done, like drive your car. You're using the mind as a tool and the body mind as a tool. And the feminine side is the more feeling, intuitive, receptive kind of, when I do energy work, it's, feeling into the expression of energy in the world and getting a read on that. So, but what sort of happened is that the mind, that masculine side within us, has moved into controlling the feminine side. So it's trying to use its tool-like structure to control the feminine energy, which is like, let's square this away, let's put this away.
Yeah.
What's this big ball of energy coming up? Where's the most practical place I can put that? And it's created this deep resistance between the masculine and the feminine energy, because the masculine energy kind of wants to order it and make it practical.
Sure.
And the feminine energy is
it's just over here being a cloud. It's like you can't.
Yeah, and really we need both to work together, because for me, even in my work, to read energy, right? Because when it's all swirling and it's in all that sort of, when the emotion is really rolling, right, and the angst, I'm allowing that to move. But at a certain point, once we let the emotion move and it's become freed up, it's now energy that is available for creation, then we use structure again to manifest something with that, if that makes sense. Then it's going to start to take form again. So this, this struggle that we're going through, whichever side, whether you're a man or a woman, or feel masculine or feel feminine, or feel like you're being oppressed by the feminine, or feel like you're being oppressed by the masculine, because I work with male clients and they feel, how women can feel oppressed by the masculine in the workforce or whatever. Male clients can feel oppressed by, experiences that they've had, with their mothers or with whatever. Like, I don't want to get too specific about what that is, because I want people to sort of investigate that for themselves. And the reason we're seeing this, and really my dad and I were, I think I have a balance of the masculine. I mean, obviously I jump out of planes and I've done some pretty like dynamic, assertive elements, but then I'm all tapped into and that was one of my lessons to learn, was actually to integrate my masculine and feminine energy. So I could be functioning with these two things operating. Yeah. Not so lost in the emotion that I couldn't put structure into life, not so into the control of the mind that I couldn't feel the emotions, because when it's really the feeling sense that emotion is almost more like when the energy has been put into a structure and then it's trying to escape. That's where you really get the drama from.
So true.
It's like the But when the emotion or the energy is like processed, then we can connect to the feeling state, the knowing state. Yeah. So knowing is different from thinking, and feeling is different from emotion.
Yeah.
And when feeling and knowing kind of come together, they're kind of like the higher elements of these two, aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's really what you want to go to. You kind of use the feeling to come into the knowing rather than use the thinking to control the emotion, or the emotion to break the thinking. It's, yeah. So when, again, with our relationships with our parents, my mother has a mental illness, so I had a much more toxic relationship to the feminine in a lot of ways, and I really wanted to, my dad as the quote-unquote healthy one, I wanted probably to identify more with the masculine energy.
Sure,
like when I was a kid, like
right.
short
Stability.
haircuts, that was represented. So my spiritual journey has taken me on a lot of integrating and allowing myself to move more fully into, instead of being super bright, intelligent, mathematical, not external success, but driven by achievement.
Yeah. This is so like earth element to me.
Earth element.
Yeah. Achievement, structure, stability.
Yeah. And just, like our more linear kind of, how we perceive success, how we perceive,
totally.
But the positive qualities are my go-getter, an ability to break down information. And I think I use it in the channeling. Like the energy comes in like a vibration, and then my mind can now take that and put it into a sort of quantifiable concept. It can conceptualize it, and it can break it. It's not just the pink cloud is, if you're going to be a teacher and you have to explain things, then you do have to take this big morph of energy and actually start to put it into a structure that's then something that people can learn and start to work with.
Yeah.
But I had to learn to connect and, and love my feminine energy a lot more, and women and friendships of, I had a lot more guy friends, I think, when I was younger. Even in my stand-up, at first I was really always wearing pants, really like rah rah rah.
Yeah.
And then
right here with you, brother.
Yeah. Then and that was part to like offset audience reaction.
Sure.
Which we can get into another time, but at the end, I had more like this kind of crazy cougar act where I wore dresses and was much more in that, vampy. And I would never have worn dresses in the beginning. And it was actually part of my spiritual process.
Right.
That actually got me wearing dresses and embodying more of this, like, this cougar vibe. Energy.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so that's, and then you've got daughters and fathers, mothers and sons, relationship couples, the masculine and the feminine energy, how we work in harmony, who embodies that role. At the end of the day, we're coming back to unity with it all, and I do believe that's why we're seeing a lot of transgender and non-identified energies coming in, because they're like, we've sort of moved past this polarity of girl and boy, and we're just in unity state. And you have people are like, that's the fall of civilization, that these little boys are wearing dresses and little girls are wearing pants, but to me it's one of the signs that there is like this sort of this integration happening, and it's starting to literally get embodied in society.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have to go one way or another with that, but it's just like we can unify with our masculine in a partnership, or with our feminine in a partnership. We can unify with it in ourselves. I believe we really need to within ourselves to really harness all our powers, or maybe not. And as the world, we're unifying these forces because we are better together.
Yeah.
We really are better together. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on this big juicy conversation about my dad's passing, feeding into...
And Georgia, I just want to thank you for sharing so openly and honestly.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
It's important we talk about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, hey, no problem.
Well, check out all Melissa's cool stuff at themarslab.com.
Well, thanks. Check out Georgia Jean's cool stuff at circleevolution.com.
We love you.
Love you.
Bye. Coming up on the next episode of Coming Out of the Cosmic Closet. And we have our very first exciting guest coming to join us in the show. We have Ruben Langdon.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Yay.
Meow. Pussycats. Meow. So Ruben is awesome. He is he's a stunt guy.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of video games. He was the stunt double for Jake Sully in Avatar.
Yep.
And he's really into the cosmic
flora. Closet.
Yeah, he's way out of the cosmic closet.
Yes.
Actually, a lot more out of the cosmic closet.
I'm really good at just spotting them.
Yeah.
I get like a knock on the head.
Yeah.
And they say, look over here.
Over here.
And I look, oh, look, there's the UFO. And then everybody sees it. And it's nice confirmation when that
everybody
happens.
sees it.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes me believe what I do, is that other people confirm back to me the energy that they feel
Yeah.
when I do my thing.